Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, President Joe Biden has tested positive for the coronavirus, with mild symptoms shortly after conceding that he would consider dropping his re-election bid if doctors diagnosed him with a serious medical condition. Karine Jean-Pierre, his press secretary, said that the president is vaccinated and boosted. Biden is currently in isolation. We will get you all the latest on that.
Also on World DNA, on the show right here, WION questioned Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov on what final borders between Russia and Ukraine would look like in a negotiated settlement. WION also took Lavrov's opinion on the views of Senator Vance, who could be US next vice president, calling for peace in Ukraine, and his criticism of the Biden administration's overall approach to the war. Stay tuned for that response from Lavrov. We are going to be tracking that very closely for you. That and a lot more right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
U.S. President Joe Biden tests positive for COVID with mild symptoms shortly after conceding he would consider dropping out if doctors diagnosed him with a serious medical condition.
All eyes on Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, who will make his first speech on day 3 at the Republican convention.
Russia is ready to work with any U.S. leader elected by the U.S. people who is willing to engage in equitable, mutually respectful dialogue, says Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
The U.S. military's mission to bring desperately needed aid into Gaza via a temporary pier ends with deliveries shifting to an Israeli port.
Israeli forces hit areas in the central Gaza Strip, killing at least 9 Palestinians, claim health officials. Israeli tanks carry out a limited advance further into Rafah in the south.
"16 people are killed in a fire at a department store in Sichuan province in China's southwest. The fire broke out in a 14-story building in a high-tech zone of the city of Zhejiang, shrouding the vicinity with thick smoke.
Amid the violent anti-quota protests, Bangladesh Chief Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, urges protesting students to keep faith in the country's judicial system, expresses hope that they will not be disappointed.
Amid a huge row, Indian state of Karnataka pauses bill for reservation in private sector firms. The state government says it will further study the bill.
The Ruud Out Show at Bassett continues. The doubles pairing of Rafael Nadal and Casper Ruud save a match point to reach the semi-final.
US President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. This is, of course, according to the White House. He is suffering mild symptoms.
No, you're right. Now, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has said that the president is vaccinated and boosted. He has tested positive for COVID twice before. Biden has planned to isolate at his home in Delaware while he carries out his duties during the time.
In a social media post, he thanked supporters for their well wishes and said he would work to get the job done for Americans while he is in recovery. The illness forced Biden to cancel a campaign speech in Las Vegas at the last minute. He was due to address a conference at UNIDO's US Latino Civil Rights Organization. After a long delay, the organization's president told the gathering that he would not be taking the stage.
The Democratic nominee is now isolated at a time when he is facing growing calls to withdraw from the race. Nearly 24 Democratic politicians have called for him to step aside after his performance in the first debate.
The latest to board the bandwagon is Adam Schiff, a congressman from California. Schiff has said that he has serious doubts about whether Biden can beat rival Donald Trump. Calling on him to pass the torch, Schiff added that Biden has been one of the most consequential presidents in American history, and he could secure his legacy by allowing another Democrat to now step forward.
While Republicans put up a show of unity at the RNC, the blue camp appears unable to mellow intra-party tensions. 3 weeks after Biden's debate debacle, nearly two-thirds of Democrats now believe Biden should withdraw from the race. According to a new poll, a survey by the AP Nork Center has found that 65% of Democrats want Biden to step aside. The survey also found that only 3 in 10 adults are still confident that he has the mental capability to serve as a president.
Biden had earlier claimed that average Democrats are still with him, even if some big names are turning on him. But this claim is losing ground by the day. In his recent appearances, Biden has not been able to work that magic that he so desperately needs at this moment to salvage his candidacy. And now, while he recovers in isolation, the president's campaign will suffer at least a few more chances that he's left with to respond to his critics.
The third day of the Republican National Convention has kicked off, with Republicans led by newly elected nominated Donald Trump and J.D. Vance shifting to issues of national security and foreign policy.
Well, former Trump administration officials are expected to take the stage to outline what foreign policy would look like in a second Trump term. The lineup will include speeches from Richard Grenell, Trump's former acting director of national intelligence, and Scott Neal, who served as a special forces soldier in Afghanistan.
U.S. Senator J.D. Vance will also address the RNC in a keynote address to Republicans to accept his nomination as the party's vice presidential candidate, as well as introduce himself to the national audience. The address could illustrate how Trump's Make America Great Again movement may dominate the party for years to come. Interestingly, the theme of the RNC is Make America Strong Once Again.
Despite making his name with the 2016 memoir Hillbilly Elegy, Vance remains unknown to the wider public. He is slated to speak for around half an hour in a speech expected to lean heavily on his biography and relating elements of his life story to the experience of ordinary Americans. Talking of foreign policy, Vance has since grown into a cheerleader-in-chief for Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric and isolationist foreign policy, which includes opposition to U.S. support for Ukraine's war against Russian invasion.
While the focus of the session is expected to be beyond America's borders, Republicans are expected to also highlight how President Biden's supposed weakness on immigration is also endangering the U.S. reputation abroad. Many speakers have already documented claims that a growing number of foreign terrorists have been able to illegally get into the U.S. from Mexico.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is willing to work with any U.S. leader that the U.S. people elect.
Absolutely. He said that during former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration, there was still dialogue underway despite serious U.S. sanctions on Moscow.
Now, Lavrov said that Russia will talk to any leader who will be willing to engage in equitable and mutually respectful dialogue. He was answering a question about relations between Moscow and Washington if Donald Trump is re-elected in November and defeats President Joe Biden.
Responding to WION's correspondent Susan Teherani, Lavrov welcomed the stance on Ukraine of Republican Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance. Take a listen.
My question is somewhat a follow-up to Pam's about Senator J.D. Vance's recent comments, not only about him criticizing aid to Ukraine, but he also called for negotiated peace in Ukraine, and he's been a critic of the Biden administration's overall policy when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I'd like to get your views on his recent comments about aid to Ukraine, and also what would final borders look like in a negotiated settlement agreed by Moscow should, for example, Senator Vance's suggestions move forward? Thank you.
Well, I heard the same thing you did. He's in favor of peace, in favor of ending the assistance that's been provided, and we can only welcome that because that's what we need to stop pumping Ukraine full of weapons, and then the war will end. And then we can look for solutions. But, of course, we're talking about solutions which take into account the reality of the situation on the ground. Not just on the ground, but also the reality of political life. This includes the fact that after, Boris Johnson, in April of 2022, with the support of the US, he basically torpedoed the peace agreements. Had he not done that, had he not scuppered that deal, a significant portion of those territories which subsequently held referendums and became a part of Russia, those territories would have remained Ukrainian, and yet they held referenda. And they did that for that very reason, because they understood that the West was going to scupper any deals, and that Kiev is not a regime that you can do business with.
4 days after the assassination bid on U.S. presidential nominee Donald Trump, mystery remains over the motive of the shooter. This amid growing calls of the Secret Service chief to resign as people continue to raise questions over the agency's handling of the whole incident.
Now, reports say that a U.S. Secret Service official has said that a local police SWAT team was in another building than the one whose roof was used by the alleged Trump shooter, Thomas Crooks. This version of the official is in contradiction to a prior claim by Secret Service Chief Kimberly Cheatle that the 20-year-old gunman Thomas Crooks was on top of the building containing the SWAT team near Trump's campaign rally. Now, according to reports, investigations have revealed that local police saw Crooks with a rangefinder and that they had informed the Secret Service they were looking for Crooks with the device before Trump took the stage at the rally.
These new revelations comes a day after news that Secret Service before Saturday's shooting boosted security for Trump after intel on an Iranian plot to kill him, which Tehran strongly denied. The disclosures are certain to increase already sharp questions about whether the Secret Service acted appropriately in arranging security for Trump's rally. Now, our correspondent Susan Tehrani explains what new information has come to light about the Secret Service's handling of the attempted assassination.
According to new reporting, a Secret Service official has now come forward contradicting previous comments made by Director Kimberly Cheatle, stating that the local police SWAT team was in a different building than the one used by the would-be assassin, Thomas Crooks. This contradicts Cheatle's earlier statement that the SWAT team was in the same building as Crooks. This new information raises further questions about the Secret Service's security arrangements for the rally and their response to the attempted assassination against former President Donald Trump.
Susan further explains the fallout over the Secret Service failures and concerns raised over its chief's competence.
The incident has led to increased scrutiny of the Secret Service security protocols and Director Kimberly Cheatle's leadership. House Speaker Mike Johnson has called for Cheatle's resignation, citing her agency's quote-unquote bungled security operation. A House task force will be established to streamline the various investigations into the incident, and the Secret Service will face questions about their priorities and preparedness as well. The incident has also raised concern about the safety of former President Donald Trump and other protectees.
Iran has rejected U.S. reports of involvement in a plot to kill former U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right. And CNN and other U.S. media outlets reported that Trump's protection was strengthened weeks ago after an alleged Iranian plot to assassinate him was uncovered.
The state-run IRNA quoted Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasir Kanani saying that Iran strongly rejects any involvement in the recent armed attack on Trump or claims about Iran's intention for such an action.
Kanani added the Islamic Republic of Iran is determined to pursue legal action against Trump for his direct role in the crime of assassinating Martyr General Qasem Soleimani. Last December, a Tehran court had ordered the U.S. government to pay nearly $50 billion in damages for assassinating Soleimani.
Now, it may be recalled that Soleimani was the commander of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. He was killed in a U.S. drone attack in Baghdad back in January 2020 that was ordered by the Trump administration.
The U.S. media reports claim that the U.S. authorities received intelligence from a human source stating that Tehran was plotting revenge for Soleimani.
The U.S. National Security Council said it was tracking Iranian threats against former Trump administration officials for years. Iran's mission to the United Nations also called the accusations unsubstantiated and malicious.
It asserted that Iran remains determined to prosecute Trump over his direct role in the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani had headed the foreign operations arm of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, overseeing Iranian military operations across the West Asia. In a provocative broadcast, the Russian state television aired a segment discussing potential missile strikes on European capitals.
Well, the inflammatory rhetoric comes in direct response to the U.S. announcement of plans to station long-range missiles in Germany. On your screens now, there will be a video which was aired on the popular 60 Minutes program on Russia 1 channel. Host Evgeny Popov suggested attacks on multiple NATO member states. The broadcast highlights Berlin, Warsaw, all the Baltic states, Paris, Bucharest, Prague, and of course American bases in Germany as the target of Russian missiles. This alarming broadcast comes on the heels of a controversial announcement at the recent NATO summit.
The White House revealed plans to periodically station long-range weapons in Germany starting in 2026 as a deterrent against Russian aggression. However, the Russian response suggests it has only served to inflame an already volatile situation.
The Kremlin immediately issued a stark warning that this deployment could effectively turn European capitals into legitimate targets for Russian missiles. And this escalation marks a dangerous new phase in East-West relations, eerily reminiscent of the darkest days of the Cold War.
Russia alleges that NATO countries and the alliance itself are preparing for a direct conflict with Russia. Moscow says NATO is not only increasing its armed forces and the number of weapons, but also their redeployment in the east. It further claims that there are increasing military production and developing military transport infrastructure. China has abruptly halted nuclear discussions with the U.S., a move that threatens to further impact bilateral relations.
Now, China calls it a direct response to Washington's continued weapons sales to Taiwan, a long-standing point of contention between the two superpowers.
美方无视中方的坚决反对。
The US has ignored China's firm opposition and repeated representations, continued arms sales to Taiwan, and taken a series of negative actions that seriously harm China's core interests, undermined political mutual trust between the two sides, and severely undermined the political atmosphere for the two sides to continue arms control consultations.
与美方商谈，举行新一轮军控与防扩散磋商。
The U.S. remains Taiwan's most important partner and biggest arms supplier, sparking repeated condemnation from China. In June, Washington approved two military sales to Taiwan worth $300 million, comprising mostly spares and repair parts for the island's F-16 fighter jets.
The talks suspension follows a brief period of cautious optimism that emerged after rare discussions on nuclear arms control between US and China back in November, aimed at easing tensions ahead of a summit between Presidents Biden and Xi. These talks had kindled hope for improved relations. However, the absence of public announcements on further dialogue since then has raised concerns among diplomats and security experts.
This latest development comes against a backdrop of growing nuclear arsenals. Recent Pentagon reports suggest that China is expanding its nuclear capabilities at an alarming rate. China is projected to possess over 1,000 warheads by 2030, while still trailing behind the U.S. and Russia in numbers. China's rapidly growing arsenal has become a source of worry for Western powers.
The situation is further complicated by China's recent warning to NATO on provoking confrontation over its ties with Russia. As global alliances shift and tensions rise, the suspension of these crucial talks threaten to usher in a new era of nuclear uncertainty and potential instability. The head of the Hong Kong Journalists Association has slammed the Wall Street Journal, alleging that the media house fired her from her position after she refused to bow down to pressure from WSJ management over her advocacy of press freedom. Take a look at this report.
The newly elected head of the Hong Kong Journalists Association stood before a throng of reporters on Wednesday to say she had been fired from her job at the Wall Street Journal after she refused demands from her boss at the paper to not run for the leadership post and to not advocate for media freedoms.
At that time, he demanded that I resign from my position on the executive committee of the Journalists Association. I told him that day that I refused, but he said the position in the Journalists Association was incompatible with my position at the Wall Street Journal. He said that employees of the Wall Street Journal should not be promoting press freedom in places like Hong Kong. He said this place is not like some Western countries where press freedom has already been established.
Selina Cheng, who covered China's automobile sector for the Journal, was elected in June to be the trade union's new chairperson at a time of mounting pressure by authorities under a national security crackdown that has seen reporters arrested and liberal media outlets closed. The Hong Kong Journalists Association said in a statement that by pressuring employees not to take part in the trade union, the journal risks hastening the decline of what space for independent journalism remains. A spokesperson for Dow Jones, the journal's parent company, told Reuters it had made some personnel changes and restructuring decisions on Wednesday, but would not comment on specific individuals.
Muslims across the world observed Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram.
Well, mourning the 7th century death of Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Imam Hussein, Muslims considered the day as the first month of the Islamic calendar. Take a look at this report.
And it's time for a quick break now.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, when we're back, we bring you a report on what's happening in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has vowed to punish those responsible for killing 6 people in student protests over civil service job rules. We'll get you the full story on the other side. Come right back.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
This week on Inside South Asia, KP Sharma Oli as Nepal PM. What does it mean for Nepal-India relations ahead? Countdown to the first budget under India's new NDA coalition government. Decoding challenges and focus areas. Afghans living in Pakistan for decades told to leave. The pain of being uprooted into an uncertain future. Deadly protests over job quotas grip Bangladesh. What does India want from the new government's budget? How will it respond to expectations from industry? What's in store for you, the taxpayer? Is the government using your hard-earned money wisely? WION cuts out the noise and serves you the facts. Watch continuous coverage on India Budget, Roadmap to a Developed Nation. Faster, higher, stronger. Words that mean so much on a sporting pitch every 4 years.
Olympic medal ने मुझे ये सिखाया कि किस तरीके से अपने आप को संभालना है.
The world's best sporting talents are assembling in Paris later this month. The quest for an Olympic medal is sport's greatest pursuit.
I think people are looking at the Olympics with a lot of hope. More than 200 countries all coming together.
The Olympic Games return to the French capital after a century.
There's not really any cities that compare to it.
Catch all the build-up to the Paris Games on WION World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One, and this is World DNA. Thanks for staying with us.
Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour. Let's get started.
U.S. President Joe Biden tests positive for COVID with mild symptoms shortly after conceding he would consider dropping his re-election bid if doctors diagnose him with a serious medical condition.
All eyes on Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance, who will make his first speech on day 3 at the Republican convention.
Russia is ready to work with any U.S. leader elected by the U.S. people who is willing to engage in equitable, mutually respectful dialogue, says Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
The U.S. military's mission to bring desperately needed aid into Gaza via a temporary pier ends with deliveries shifting to an Israeli port.
Israeli forces hit areas in the central Gaza Strip, killing at least 9 Palestinians, claim health officials. Israeli tanks carry out a limited advance further into Rafah in the south.
16 people killed in a fire at a department store in Sichuan province in China's southwest. The fire broke out in a 14-story building in a high-tech zone of the city of Zigong, shrouding the vicinity with thick smoke.
Amid the violent anti-quota protests, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina urges protesting students to keep faith in the country's judicial system, expresses hope that they will not be disappointed.
Amid a huge row, Indian state of Karnataka pauses bill for reservation in private sector firms. The state government says it will further study the bill.
The Ruda show at Bassett continues. The doubles pairing of Rafael Nadal and Casper Ruud save a match point to reach the semi-final.
Well, yet another news of another virus. A new virus has struck in Gujarat, this time claiming the lives of several children.
In a tragic incident, 6 children in Gujarat's Aravali district are suspected to have succumbed to the Chandipur virus in the last 5 days. The total number of suspected cases has now risen to 12. The Gujarat Health Minister said 5 out of the 6 deaths are from the civil hospital in Himantnagar in Sabarkantha district.
All 12 samples, including 8 from Sabarkant, have been sent to Pune's National Institute of Virology for confirmation. The Chandipura virus, scientifically known as Chandipur vesicular virus, is an RNA virus from a family that includes the rabies virus. It was first identified in 1965 in Chandipura village of Maharashtra, predominantly known to affect children. It is transmitted through the sting of a vector-infected sandfly and mainly affects children aged 9 months to 14 years.
Symptoms of Chandipura virus infection include the sudden onset of high fever, severe headaches, frequent vomiting, and prominent seizures. Patients may experience an altered mental status, which can lead to coma and death in severe cases.
Now, the exact transmission mechanisms are still being studied, but the primary mode is vector-borne transmission. Certain animal species might act as reservoirs. Specific environmental conditions that favor sandfly breeding are also linked to the outbreak.
No specific antiviral treatment or vaccine exists as yet for the infection. Treatment involves supportive care to alleviate symptoms and prevent complications. Hospitalization is necessary for severe cases. One has to ensure proper hydration to manage severe vomiting. Intensive care is also required for managing neurological symptoms, including respiratory complications. Friction seems to be brewing among NDA government's alliance partners and the BJP in the state of Uttar Pradesh.
Well, of course, this after the alliance's disappointing performance in the state in the recently concluded general election. In the latest, a war of words, or in this case, a war of official letters has erupted between Union Minister Anupriya Patel and the state's Industrial Development Minister Nand Gopal Nandi.
A temporary toll plaza constructed on the Varanasi-Shaktinagar highway is at the center of the face-off. To put things in perspective, Union Minister Patel wrote a letter to CM Yogi Adityanath demanding the removal of the temporary toll plaza. Why? Well, according to the Union Minister's letter, common people in the area have been facing a lot of problems as there are 2 toll plazas in a 22-kilometer area. She also expressed apprehension about toll being collected in an incorrect manner and underlined that the toll was not being collected through fast tags.
The letter contended that the toll plaza is quote-unquote illegal altogether. Hitting back, Industrial Development Minister Nandi said in a letter that there are 3 functional toll plazas on the Varanasi-Shaktinagar route, namely Fatehpur, Lodhi and Maloghat. He mentioned that they have been constructed and are operating as per the prescribed standards.
The letter went on to mention that toll is only being collected at the temporary toll plaza in cases where vehicles are avoiding paying toll at the other plazas by taking alternative routes. This, according to the UP minister, has been resulting in loss of revenue for the private firm that constructed the road. Nandi also raised the issue of negligence regarding FASTag. He blamed a private company of inaction after they were awarded the tender to install FASTag scanners on the plaza in question.
This is, however, not an isolated incident. On Tuesday, a member of UP Legislative Council from the Jan Satta Dal, also a BJP ally, made allegations against Patel. He said that comments made by the Union Minister against a senior Jan Satta Party leader were key reasons for the National Democratic Alliance debacle in Uttar Pradesh. We shift focus to Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has vowed to punish those responsible for killing 6 students in student protests over civil service job rules.
Right after a day of clashes between police forces and demonstrators, in televised address to the nation, Hasina condemned the killing and insisted that perpetrators would be brought to justice. She said, and I quote, "I firmly declare that those who carried out murders, looting and violence, whoever they are, I will make sure they will be given the appropriate punishment."
Her assurance came hours after police on Wednesday forcibly dispersed a funeral ceremony to mourn the dead. At Dhaka University, police fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse around 500 protesters who carried empty coffins draped with the red and green national flag to symbolize those killed the previous day. Several opposition activists were arrested after their clashes with the police.
We were returning after the funeral. We were leaving the campus. They set off sound grenades, blasted homemade explosives, and lobbed tear gas at us. What is the reason for all of this? If the administration doesn't want to cooperate, how will the protests remain peaceful?
They can make their decisions after killing us. We are ready to be killed right now. If they want to kill us, they can do it. We were always ready for discussion. We always propose discussion. But now, they will need to take any decisions only after killing us.
On Tuesday, 6 people were killed in clashes across the country as rival student groups attacked each other. The violence against public sector jobs quotas prompted Hasina's government to order the nationwide closure of schools and universities until further notice. Protesters have been accusing the Hasina administration of misusing the quota scheme to favor the loyalists with coveted government jobs. Now imagine, Shivan, you find out that mechanic who has been working your vehicle for a long time knows very little about how the engine operates. You felt they were pulling it off brilliantly. Now actually, it was merely a matter of luck.
Well, that is similar to what's been happening at central banks. Take a look at this report to know exactly what we're talking about.
The scenario is similar to the mechanics anecdote. The world's central banks, essentially repair shops for inflation, have seen something similar. Over the past 3 decades, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England and the European Central Bank have all worked to keep inflation low and steady. In exchange, policymakers received a plethora of accolades for using their expertise and discretion for the common good. A less favorable picture of the money mandarins has emerged due to the post-pandemic price surge. Not one central bank anticipated the inflationary surge. Transitory was the word they used for the price spike post the pandemic. After it showed no signs of moving, in a knee-jerk reaction, they unleashed a storm of interest rate hikes that would trigger a significant economic downturn. This has the potential to turn into a financial catastrophe. These setback costs are real. Inflation taxed people's purchasing power, causing their living standards to decline globally. US Fed Chair Jerome Powell has his peers at other major central banks are prepared to declare mission accomplished and proceed now that the inflation is finally slouching towards target. However, they need to figure out what went wrong and look at ways to prevent it from happening again. More importantly, they need to take accountability as they are an independent bloc. Independent central banks are free to pursue price stability without interference from politicians. Reason? Politicians can misuse such a tool as an incentive to boost growth in the run-up to elections. Because of this, they make hasty judgments that lead to higher and more unpredictable pricing, such as lowering rates when they should be raising them. The 1990s marked the birth of independent central banks. Independence stands to reason that monetary officials would have some idea of what triggers inflation. Their inability to foresee an almost 10% surge in prices between 2021 and 2022 implies that they are unable to. The other real question is, do central banks have the right tools to do the job? For now, independence without accountability is weighing on common people more than ever. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Turkey's wealth per adult surged by over 157% between 2022 and 2023.
And of course, this is outpacing all other countries. According to UBS Global Wealth Report 2024, these were the findings. This remarkable growth comes despite Turkey's inflation rate of nearly 72%, which has significantly reduced purchasing power for many of its 85 million residents. In comparison, the US had a modest growth of 2.5% in average wealth per adult. The Turkish lira has lost nearly 83% of its value against the dollar in the past 5 years, now trading at 33 lira to the dollar. However, Turks who own assets such as homes have seen their wealth grow as inflation drives up the value of these holdings.
UBS defines wealth as the value of financial and real assets owned by households minus their debts. UBS noted that high inflation can lead to nominal increases in asset values, benefiting those who own real assets like housing. However, not everyone benefits equally. Those without such assets or whose wages don't keep up with inflation suffer.
The report also highlights the currency effect, where local currency growth in wealth can differ significantly from dollar terms. Turkey's wealth growth in local currency terms was nearly 158% compared to 63% in USD. UBS also pointed out that being asset rich does not necessarily mean being cash rich, particularly in Turkey, where real wages have struggled to keep pace with inflation, causing financial stress despite rising asset values. All right, next up, let's get you the latest on what's happening in technology. Vietnamese hackers are targeting Indians with a sophisticated Android malware campaign. If you've been using an Android device, you need to hear this carefully. The hackers are sending fake traffic tickets or e-challan messages on WhatsApp as a means of hacking into the user's device. A report from cybersecurity firm Cloud SEK has revealed that this malware has already infected over 4,400 devices. Scammers are impersonating the Karnataka police and sending fraudulent penalty messages to trick users into installing a malicious app. Once installed, the app steals personal information and enables financial fraud. The malware intercepts OTPs and other sensitive messages, allowing the attackers to log into the victim's e-commerce accounts, purchase gift cards, and then redeem them. The Indian state of Gujarat has been identified as the most affected region, followed by Karnataka.
Scientists from University College London and the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility have developed a new technology that shows detailed 3D images of the heart. Dubbed the Google Earth for the human heart, the technology promises to enhance cardiovascular medicine significantly. Researchers use a special X-ray method called hierarchical phase contrast tomography to capture tiny details of one healthy and one diseased heart. With heart disease being the top cause of death worldwide, the new 3D imaging technology could enable research that was previously impossible.
Anyone at Tokyo's Haneda airport, chances are your luggage might get towed to the baggage belt on a driverless vehicle. The Haneda airport has started the trials for a driverless vehicle to tow cargo containers. The aim is to ease the pressure on the airport staff amid labor shortages as the number of tourists flying into Japan soars. The autonomous vehicle can tow over 11,000 kilograms of containers. It can pull up to 6 containers at a time, navigating between aircraft and airport buildings over a distance of around 2 kilometers. The first at a Japanese airport, the trial is part of government-backed efforts to innovate the air transport industry. The driverless vehicle will be fully operational by the end of next year. All right, we're now cutting live to visuals from the RNC, where Ohio Senator and the Republicans' vice presidential candidate, the nominee perhaps, is J.D. Vance, who's speaking at the moment.
Is a night of hope, a celebration of what America once was, and with God's grace, what it will soon be again. And it is a reminder of the sacred duty we have to preserve the American experiment, to choose a new path for our children and grandchildren. But as we meet tonight, we cannot forget that this evening could have been so much different. Instead of a day of celebration, this could have been a day of heartache and mourning. For the last 8 years, President Trump has given everything he has to fight for the people of our country. He didn't need politics, but the country needed him. Now, prior to running for president, he was one of the most successful businessmen in the world. He had everything anyone could ever want in a life. And yet, instead of choosing the easy path, he chose to endure abuse, slander, and persecution. And he did it because he loves this country. I want all Americans to go and watch the video of a would-be assassin coming a quarter of an inch from taking his life. Consider the lies they told you about Donald Trump, and then look at that photo of him, defiant, fist in the air, when Donald Trump rose to his feet in that Pennsylvania field. All of America stood with him. And what did he call us to do for our country? To fight for America. Even in his most perilous moment, we were on his mind. His instinct was for us, for our country, to call us to something higher, to something greater, to once again be citizens who ask what our country needs of us. Now consider what they said. They said he was a tyrant. They said he must be stopped at all costs. But how did he respond? He called for national unity, for national calm, literally right after an assassin nearly took his life. He remembered the victims of the terrible attack, especially the brave Corey Compertori, who gave his life to protect his family. God bless him. And then President Trump flew to Milwaukee and got back to work. Now that's the man I've gotten to know personally over the last few years. He is tough, and he is, but he cares about people. He can stand defiant against an assassin one moment and call for national healing the next. He is a beloved father and grandfather, and of course, a once-in-a-generation business leader. He's the man who is feared by America's adversaries, but 2 nights ago, and I'll share a moment, said goodnight to his 2 boys, told them he loved them, and made sure to give each of them a kiss on the cheek. And I will say, Don and Eric squirmed the same way my 4-year-old does when his daddy tries to give him a kiss on the cheek. Sorry, guys. He is all those things, but tonight we celebrate he is our once and future President of the United States of America. Now, I want to respond to his call for unity myself. We have a big tent in this party on everything from national security to economic policy. But my message to you, my fellow Republicans, is we love this country and we are united to win. Right. Now, I think our disagreements actually make us stronger. That's what I've learned in my time in the United States Senate, where sometimes I persuade my colleagues and sometimes persuade me. And my message to my fellow Americans, those watching from across the country, is shouldn't we be governed by a party that is unafraid to debate ideas and come to the best solution? That's the Republican Party of the next 4 years. United in our love for this country and committed to free speech and the open exchange of ideas. And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America. Now, never in my wildest imagination could I have believed that I'd be standing here tonight. I grew up in Middletown, Ohio. A small town where people spoke their minds, built with their hands, and loved their God, their family, their community, and their country with their whole hearts. But it was also a place that had been cast aside and forgotten by America's ruling class in Washington. When I was in the 4th grade, a career politician by the name of Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs. When I was a senior in high school, that same Joe Biden supported the disastrous invasion of Iraq, and at each step of the way, in small towns like mine in Ohio or next door in Pennsylvania or Michigan,
all right, that is J.D. Vance speaking at the RNC, Ohio Senator, and he has officially accepted the nomination of the Republicans to be the next Vice President of America. We could really be seeing the next Vice President of America on the screen as of now, as he accepts the nomination. Of course, this will be decided later this year, but of course Jyotsna asked everyone to go back to that video of Trump, of that assassination, of that failed assassination attempt on Trump in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And he also referred to that photograph, which we all knew they are going to be really using through this campaign.
Absolutely. Now, foreign policy and national security, of course, is a third-day theme. And he did pick up immigration, a lot of things we will be seeing further when we go ahead.
And chants of fight, fight, fight could be heard all through the RNC. Of course, that's something which started soon after Trump was shot at. And that is what Trump said before he exited from that stage in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Of course, this is all the update that's coming in from the RNC at the moment. We are going to be wrapping up World DNA for you right here as of now. But stay tuned, come right back after the break. This is World DNA, and WION World is One is where you are at for all your global updates. Come right back.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
This